this week we're going to be talking all about planning our content. Now, I've talked about content a couple of episodes ago, and I wanted to come back and talk a little bit more about the planning side of it, because in terms of things that we can struggle with as coaches in our business, marketing our business, planning content is definitely one of those things. Certainly something that I've struggled with in the past. And today I'm going to share, first of all, what my process looks like for planning content and creating content, and just some tips that you can take away to make that whole content creation process easier. I will say as well that I do have a brand new live round for the whole of May, basically, so starting on the 2nd of May, which is going to really look at the content marketing thing in a lot more detail. So we're really going to get into creating a content strategy, and that is going to include content planning. So I'll talk a bit more about that at the end, but let's get into content planning. So again, quick recap: content is basically all the stuff that we create, the Instagram posts, the captions that we write on Instagram, the videos, the reels, the blog posts, the podcast, like all of that stuff that we create for the purpose of marketing our businesses. And it's a really important element of most of our marketing, and planning the content for that can be a bit of a pain in the arse. So I'm going to share how I do it and how I come up with ideas and all of that jazz. And hopefully that's going to be helpful. And like I say, I'm going to share some tips. So I used to basically sit around and spend a lot of time thinking, what the heck should I post today? What should I post today? And that was not working for me. And then what I would also do is I would try and create content for lots of different individual places. So I would sit down and I'd be like, right, I need to create some content for Instagram. And then I'd be like, right, I need to write a blog post this week. What's that going to be about? And then I'll be like, okay, so I want to do a video. What am I going to do the video on? And everything was separate. And that was a lot of work. It was a real headache. I had to think of new ideas all of the time, which was really difficult, and it was just exhausting, basically. And then after a little while, I experimented with video, and including video and blog posts. I committed to more of a regular blog posting schedule, and then I came to the Wholehearted Business Show multi-platform content show concept, and that really helped because it streamlined the whole thing. Instead of having to create content for multiple platforms or think of lots of different content ideas, I simplified the whole process. So that was a really big thing for me, was just shifting that over. Now, I still have to create other pieces of content in addition to the Wholehearted Business Show, and I'm going to explain a little bit about how I come up with ideas for that and plan for that as well. But let's start off with how I plan my content right now. So I will plan content on a quarterly basis. So I'm recording this in a batch. I'll get onto batching in a minute. But in a batch of 4 videos, usually I only do 3 and I'm doing 4 today, and this is the last one. So I'm starting not to make sense. That'll be why. But basically, I have sat down and planned out most of my content for the quarter. So that's 12, usually about 12 pieces of content, because I post once a week. So 12 pieces of content. And that makes it easier than trying to, like some people like, plan out content for the whole year. Fuck no, that would be a nightmare. And plus you don't necessarily know what you're going to have going on at the time, and I'll explain why that's important, certainly to me, in a sec. But I will sit down and plan titles for the Wholehearted Business Show. So what I tend to do is so first of all, I have a document in Notion called Quick Ideas. Now, whenever I have a random idea for a bit of content, I will write it down on that note, on that Notion document. So I have that there. And then I have some other documents. I have a proper Notion planning template, content planning template, which you can get in my Notion planning templates. So I have a proper template. And then I also have extra documents. So I have SEO research, and I have a big master list of ideas. So I have various different things. And then what I will do is I will sit down, usually with Pinterest open, YouTube open, the Google Keyword Planner, sometimes Uber Suggest as well, which is quite a good tool for keywords. And I will sit down with all of these things open, and I will brainstorm 12 titles. And as part of that process, I'll also sit down and just ask myself if there's anything that I just want to share, that I just feel really called to share. You know, I think about my attraction, connection, and sales content. So I'll also map out anything specific that I want to promote that's in that quarter. So when I was planning for this quarter, I was looking, okay, I've got this live round around content, creating connecting content, and around creating a content strategy. So I was thinking about that, which is why I'm talking about that. I was thinking about that, and then towards the end of June, I've earmarked some time for a summit, so I've got half an eye on that. Now, this isn't about planning out topics that are set in stone, because often I'll have all of the topics, but then I'll change things around, or something will just come up and I'm just like, actually, I'm sitting down to batch record today. I really want to talk about this. I'm going to talk about this, and that's absolutely fine as well. So I will sit down with all those things open, and there's no, like, I don't have, a certain number has to be SEO, attraction based, and a certain number has to be connection. I really just go with the flow and what I feel at the time. But I do like to pull some of the ideas from SEO, the ideas from Pinterest and YouTube and stuff into the mix as well. So I'll sit down with all of that, and from that I will come up with usually 12. I often have guests for the Wholehearted Business Show as well, so sometimes it's not quite 12, depends on who I've got in my mind to ask to come on the show. But I will come up with those different ideas, and that works really well. Another thing that I've got half of my eye on is thinking about content clusters or cornerstone content. Basically, it means all the same thing, but in blog and SEO terms, this is basically where you create basically like a cluster of interlinked content. So for my business and something that I'm working on, just getting my head around a little bit, is, do I have a content cluster around starting a coaching business? Do I have a content cluster around blogging for your coaching business that links into a wider content cluster around marketing your coaching business? And what do I need to create any content that links different things together? Because for SEO purposes, that's really good. So that's a useful thing to consider and think about as well, is that if that's applicable. And then what I'll do is I'll write all of those titles into my Notion planning sheet. I'll look at whether or not the sales content or attraction, not that it makes a massive difference, but it's just useful for me to see like the spread of content. And then I will sit down and start to record. So I will batch record as I'm doing now. This is like the 4th video that I'm recording this afternoon, so I will usually do about 3. 4s, I can feel my voice starting to go a little bit, I'm talking too much, but I usually sit down and batch record, which I find a lot easier than recording week on week. So I'll sit down and record the videos, and then once that's done, usually every week I will edit the video. You guys probably know the drill by now. The video goes onto YouTube, the audio is pulled off, and that becomes a podcast, and then the transcription of the video is then edited into a blog post. However, I am playing with the idea of writing a more solid blog post before I actually record, because what often happens is I come up with all these ideas come into my head after I've finished recording the video, so they get put in the blog post but they don't actually make it to the video or the podcast, which is slightly frustrating. So I think I probably need to spend a little bit more time writing the content notes, or actually writing the blog post and then doing it slightly in reverse. But that works really well for me in terms of the planning. And what I find, again, like the reason that this joined up strategy is so useful is that I repurpose a lot of what it is that I do in these videos for social media as well. So the blog post gets shared on Pinterest, and then what I try and do, and what I'm right in the middle of the process of experimenting with and getting right, is pulling off some little social videos for reels directly from the video. So actually editing the video into reels, so that some of my reel content for Instagram comes from these videos as well. So hopefully I'm saying lots of profound little snippets, because what I found, and reels is an interesting one to get into, because like I say, most of my content comes from these videos, but what I still have some Instagram reels and grid posts and stories. That's the other part of my content. And then there might be some Facebook posts. I've got a private client and customer only Facebook group that is probably been a bit neglected. So those are the other places that I need to create content for, and my email list. However, what tends to happen is once a week I email my email list, and it's that episode of the Wholehearted Business Show goes out, and I always share the episode of the Wholehearted Business Show in my Facebook group and on Instagram. So that's some content already done, and then it's really about filling the gaps in. And I think there's different ways I think you can approach this. And for me, again, I'm very much recording this while I'm right in the flux of changing slightly how I do things. So I'm playing with posting a bit more regularly on Instagram and not being so precious about what it is that I post, which is a bit of a challenge in itself. But what I've started to do now is, if a thought comes into my head, because what I find is that I am not a naturally concise person. One of the reasons I like creating this longer form content is that I feel like I can communicate better doing this kind of content. So things like 1-minute reels do not come naturally to me at all. But what I've started doing is, if a thought pops into my head, like a little kind of snippet of a tip or a learnable thing or something that I can share that is profound, I'll whip my camera out and I'll just video myself talking to the camera, and I'll just talk the little snippet, the little tip or the little profound thing, I will just record that and then that is on my phone and I can edit it up into a reel later. So that's one of the things that I do for Instagram, for Reels. And again, Reels can then be reshared on YouTube Shorts and also shared on Pinterest idea pins as well. But what you can also do is you can repurpose your central content. So for me, I might take the blog post and I might create an Instagram carousel post, and each slide is like a snippet of the blog post or is the main learning tips from that or something from that, and that can work super well as well. I might go back to old content, especially if you've been going for a little while. Go back to your old content, reshare. Something I was literally just doing before was I was looking on my Instagram highlights and I was looking that you can create a reel out of an Instagram highlight. So I was looking at some of my old highlights, some of my old stories that I've put into a highlight and thinking I could do that as a reel. There's some really bloody good stuff there. I could just do that as a reel. So I could re-record it as a reel with the same kind of thing, or I could just save it as a reel, as a way that you can just save it on Instagram. So go back to your old content and bring some of that out. So what I tend to, in terms of the planning, it's this core content is planned in advance, but with flexibility. If I need to show up in a different way, that's absolutely fine. And then I will fill in the gaps, if you like. So the gaps are Instagram and Facebook. I'll fill in some of the gaps, and that tends to be things where I've just whipped my phone out and recorded something, the quick ideas. And I tend to do that, fill in those gaps on a weekly basis or not, if not in the moment. Another thing certainly with Instagram as a platform, when it comes to stories, is I think it was Gary V, and this is probably the only thing that he said that really resonates, because I don't actually resonate with him very much. He's very like hustle, bro marketer guy. But one of the things I think he said somewhere was don't create, document. So when it comes to Instagram stories, that's something I really try and think about. Is like, how can I simply document what it is that I'm doing? Can I do a story right now of me sat here recording this show as a bit of a behind the scenes thing? What can I share that is actually just what I'm doing? Like, it's just documenting what I'm actually doing. And I think that's a really good way, certainly for like those quick sharing things for Instagram stories. I think that can work really well. And again, for Facebook, perhaps that's slightly different, but for Facebook, I just try and think, okay, what's going to get people to start conversations? And you can look at your old content for inspiration for that. But it's really, again, something I feel that has probably been missing from some of my content recently is like the polls, the questions, the conversation starters and things like that, just to get that going, because that can be really important in your marketing as well. So in terms of content planning, that's what mine looks like. So I plan per quarter for the big central pieces of content, and then I batch record those. So about every month I'll sit and batch what I need for the month, and then I will edit those on a weekly basis. And then usually every week I'll sit down and look at Instagram and look at Facebook, and then more on the go, I approach Instagram stories a bit more on the go. So that's what content planning really looks like for me. And I think in terms of your approach, it really is about finding what works, because we're all very different. And I've really discovered this with my clients, how people need to show up. Again, if you're neurodiverse, there's going to be lots of different things that's going to factor into what feels good to you in terms of how you plan your content. Like, some people are very much in the moment people, and they much prefer to create in the moment. I need a bit of a balance of that, and this is where I find having like my main content planned and batched means that I am 100% more likely to actually show up on a consistent basis. It makes it a lot easier. It means that I can outsource elements of that. So I've got a VA and I outsource some bits of scheduling and things out to her, and that works really well. It also means in terms of just not feeling super overwhelmed, it really helps. It means that there's not so much weight on every week to create content just for that week. So I find that works really well for me, but for you might need to be more in the moment. It's just finding a method that works for you. And I think in terms of coming up with ideas, like I would definitely, hit like Pinterest, Google, YouTube, see what other people are posting and just put your own spin on it. What I'll sometimes do is I'll search. I won't even click through to someone else's content. I'll just look at the title and think, oh, okay, how would I answer that? What have I got to say about that topic? And again, this comes back to what I was saying in the episode that I did 2 weeks ago around the content strategy and about putting yourself out there and about teaching from your lived experience and putting your thoughts and opinions into what it is that you share. That's really what's going to make you stand out. That's really what's going to make people connect with you. Don't be afraid to get into when it comes to thinking about your topics and coming up with ideas. But yeah, I think that's such a good way to do it. Another thing that has just come into my head around ideas is always think about what your clients are experiencing. So a lot of ideas that I get from content is thinking, oh, my client asked me that question the other day, or they were struggling with that. And if they're asking that question, if they're struggling with that, a lot of people, other people who are probably your ideal clients, are also asking the same questions and struggling with the same thing. So that's a really great way to start as well when it comes to content ideas too. So as I said, that's what my content planning looks like. Yours might look completely different. I think it's just finding a system that works for you and that helps you. It's really about whatever system is going to facilitate you showing up in the best possible way for you that feels good. Really, that's really what it's about. Speaking of, as I said at the start, I am running a brand new live round of Connecting Content, which is for the whole of May. So we start on Monday the 2nd of May. And this is a live round that is going to bring together my blog school program, my Pinterest magic, and my how to create a multi-platform content show. So you'll get access to all those 3 courses. If you have already done them, if you're already signed up to one of them, do watch out for an email, because I will give you a discount code to get into this live round so that you can access the full lot. There's like some intricacies, I think, in how this is going to work in terms of people who have signed up for stuff before, but you will get access to all of that. And what we're going to do over that month is we are going to really get your shit together around your content marketing so that you're going to have a plan. So we're going to plan some content. We are going to create a system around how it is that you create that and show up for it that feels good to you. So again, there's no one size fits all. It's not going to look exactly like how mine looks. It's going to look how you want to look. If you want to start a podcast, we're going to do that in that month. If you want to start a YouTube channel, whatever it is that you want to do and you want some support and motivation and accountability to do it, that's what we'll be working on in that month. So it's really exciting. I can't wait to put that together and to have people join and to support people through that. Like I said, I just think there's so much. Oh, it's just, I love doing this show. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy sitting down and batching these episodes. And I enjoy like all of the content side of things, and I think it can just make such a difference to your business. It really can, and such a difference to like your. This probably sounds like quite big, but actually, when you're spending time in your business, if you can be creating content in a way that feels good, like that's going to make your life better. If you're spending like a few hours a week on marketing your business, doing something that feels good, that's a really big thing, and I'd be really excited to help people shift how they feel about showing up and their content in their business and actually really putting themselves into it as well. So do check that out. The link is below in the description or in the blog post, the usual places where you can find it. But if you've got any questions, pop me a DM on Instagram. I am at Wholeheartedly Laura if you want to chat over there. But yes, it's going to be a fantastic live round, so do check it out. But I hope you have a beautiful week, everyone. I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.